Okay, so continuing with the review of the rules for Custer's Last Stand, 150-year commemoration. Solitaire game, we had left off, we're going to start with section 7 of the rules, which is winning the game. Okay, so there's what's called a sudden victory. This is what you as playing as the 7th Cavalry are trying to achieve. You can get that by either eliminating these 6 villagers or all of the Indian leaders, including 2 Moons, which is already out. Now you don't count any of them that might roll and not appear at the battle, which will be explained here shortly. But of the ones that do come out, if they're killed, if either of those 2 conditions are met before the end of turn 15, it is a sudden victory, and the remaining Indians are assumed to surrender and agree to return to the reservation. Otherwise, the Indians have won. And then there's a victory points table, which is in the rules and reproduced in the player's aid, which gives you points. So if the cavalry lost, but you wanted to sort of compare it to the last time they lost, you can assign points for disc eliminated, leaders eliminated, such, and give you kind of a relative score. But they lost, so you don't use this to really determine like victory. It's like, how bad did you lose? Okay. Then starting in section 8 of the rules, we have, it's divided up into what's called key terms and associated rules. And then they're organized alphabetically, and there's a lot of overlap. So certain points are repeated, but within a section. So if there's a rule that kind of applies to 3 different keywords, then it's probably going to be listed under all of those. So the term activation refers to, you turn over a disc that has an Indian's name on it, and you consult a chart, you roll a die, and if it comes up a 1, then that particular Indian is not going to be at the battle. And this is keeping with the theme that Custer does not know how many Indians are he's facing. So it can turn out that 2, 3, I mean, theoretically, all of these could just keep rolling 1s, but not very likely. So if, on the other hand, it's not a 1, you use that same die and you just continue with the looking on this chart. And in the case of both 2, 3, or 4, for instance, you find the corresponding Indian leader and you add the corresponding number of disc, and then you roll that same dice a second time, and you can solve a second chart. A 1, 2 here will start, it's going to start in one of these spaces around the village, and so a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. So if I had rolled a 2, 1, 2, yellow nose would be here, and that doesn't cost a cohesion point, but then he would spend 1 to move, and more than likely he will move into the same space with Reno, which counts as a charge and lets him take and roll 6 dice when attacking. So that is the activation section. The only note probably worth saying is that 2 Moons is already considered activated, and in the very, very unlikely possibility that you drew one of these and all of the spaces were occupied, not empty, then you would skip bringing that leader and additional units out that turn. You would basically just ignore them, and then next turn they'd be freed up. Never had that happen, but it's addressed in the rules as a possibility. Okay, then we have the next key term is charging. So this is just the special name that refers to, like as in this example before, it's just when you moved 1 space, which is the range of movement and the range of firing, and ended up in the same space as an enemy unit. So there are restrictions. One of the restrictions is, let's say that Benteen and Reno were already here. So you cannot charge. One restriction is you can't charge if you would end up with less of your color than is already there. So 4 can't charge against 8. He can stand back and fire and roll 5 dice, but he can't move into the same space 4 against 8 and get the extra die. So that's the one, that is the first restriction. You can also not charge if your cohesion level is below 6. So dropping below 6 has several consequences. It also affects how the dice are locked. You're taking, I'm kind of jumping out of order, but since I brought it up, you're also going to have to take your exhaustion checks, and also Custer can't use his Custer luck tokens if he or his unit is below the level 6, which is an incentive to do regrouping. Okay. There's some others here, like you can't charge out of a space with the unit into another space, so they kind of get stuck there. I'm going to say right up front, I'm not trying to read absolutely every single rule, but you're going to know 95% of it by the end of this video. There's no real, you'll want to read the rules anyway if you decide to get a copy of the print and play and try it. Let's see. Also, there's a term called the Cavalry combined cavalry movement. Now that occurs when both or two or more had started the beginning of the turn in the same space. And then the way that works is, let's say this is the situation. If either Yates or Custer is revealed, then when the one, have to have the cohesion points to do it, but if Yates has one and Custer has one, Yates could say move and pull Custer along with him, and then that can be important if, say, they wanted to charge against 6, right? So Yates couldn't have charged 6 red by himself, but he can pull Custer along with him, and then 8 can charge against the 6 in that situation. Now Yates would get his 6 dice. Custer wouldn't actually do his firing until his token was, or leader counter was revealed, but they would both just go ahead and spend their one for the movement firing at the beginning. Also, the combined cavalry thing is only for this moving. It's not for fleeing, which we haven't talked about. So you can't have a situation where they started together, Yates fires and then decides to flee away from the village. He can't pull Custer with him. Custer's going to have to do that by himself. Now he could be, maybe he's reduced and he decides that he's going to do his move and move first and then just fire back. So it'd be a move and fire back at whoever was there. But as far as the fleeing goes, that's not done with a combined cavalry movement. Okay. Custer's luck tokens. Only the Custer unit can do the, can expend these. He can expend them for both offensive, it's dice manipulation. He can do it both defensively and offensively. If he's doing it for offensive purposes, basically that means whenever he stops, he can just take any die that's not a 4 and he can change it to another number. Now he can manipulate a locked die. Again, we haven't got to this, but if there's a locked die down here in this 3, 2, 1 section, that one he can manipulate. 4s he cannot. And so let's say he had a 5 and a 6 that he had rolled, and he had also this 3. He could just say, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and spend this. I'm going to change this 3 to a 6, or he could change this 5 to a 6. I have these flipped around. He could change one of these to the other, make a pair, and then eliminate one of the discs from the enemy. When he's being fired at the end of the think of it this way, the Indian rolls and rolls and rolls, and then maybe the Indian leader has gotten a pair of 5s and a pair of 6s against Custer. which would look like Custer's going to lose 2 discs normally. But Custer says, I will spend these 2 discs, and I will change this 6 to a 4, and I will change this 5 to a 4. Then he broke up both pairs. I will point out one other thing that might not be obvious. It's in the rules, but let's say in a similar situation that this had been ruled against Custer. So in that case, if he says, I'm going to spend a Custer luck to change this to a 4, this to a 4, this is just for convenience. You still have a pair of 6s, so this just floats over here. So he would actually, in that situation, he would actually have to spend a 3rd one to prevent there being still a pair of 6s in that case. Okay, so that's Custer's luck. He can't even use it if at that point his cohesion level is down here below 6. He can't use it to help any other units, whether they're being fired on or they're firing. It's only people, the enemy firing at him or him firing when he can use the Custer's luck. Okay, and then I think that's another good point to stop, and then we'll start up with the next part on destroyed units.